The New Mexico Genealogical Society was founded in 1960. It is the oldest genealogy society in New Mexico. We do many things. We have a website, www.nmgs.org. We have a Primeras Familias project. We have a DNA project. We have a newsletter. We have an award-winning journal, and much more. I'm Henrietta Martinez-Christmas. I'm president of the New Mexico Genealogical Society, and I welcome all of you here today. Angela is a native Albuquerquean. She's never left Albuquerque except for all the traveling she's done since she retired. She got hooked on genealogy in 1998, and she wanted to know more about her grandparents, Telesforo Chavez and Rafaela Gurule, both who died young when her mother was a young child. So Angela started researching her Gurule ancestors, and now has the Gurule website. We know her as the Gurule guru, basically, the guru lady. She helps families all over the world, actually, with that website. She's a board member for NMGS. She takes care of our mailing list. She does proofreading. She does a lot of behind-the-scenes stuff. She works on the membership committee. She helps Miguel with DNA, verification of genealogies, and a bunch more stuff. And then there's me. I'm the current president of NMGS. I've been doing this 37 years. I hate to even say it. I started when I was 1. So I work with all different kinds of things, but one of the things I think I do a lot more than maybe most people is I do a lot of filling out of forms, people that are stuck on brick walls, SAR, DAR applications and things like that. And that's kind of what ended up moving forward with the handout that we had that's stapled backwards, is finding a form or something that actually works with your own genealogy. That's a big part of the problem, is I think finding that form. So part of doing your genealogy is we all want to make it interesting, right? We want to be the one that has the one person in the world that's just famous or shot somebody or you're related to Billy the Kid or whatever, but you got to prove that. It's exciting, of course, to see your ancestors' names in records. You know, every time I open up the Don Diego de Vargas journals and look out at them, you know, all the indexes, and I just see so many of my families. It just really does something to me, because it's like they were making history and they didn't really even know it. And, you know, we still continue to honor those people. So for me, it's just, you know, seeing their name, excitement, it's the curiosity. You know, at times I think I should have been a private investigator. I think all of us at some point think that we should do that, because we just like the hunt. I really discourage people from just you know, picking names. I know a lot of people that are just name gatherers. You know, I've got 57,000 people in my database, and you're going, really? And they're not sourced, we don't know how they're connected, they're just a name. And so I really like the story that goes with that. The other part is, what is your genealogy goal? Like everybody, I think you want to fill in that chart. You know, you get started and you're like, I'm going to get that chart finished next week. And it doesn't really work that way. Some is to publish a book. Some people are, you know, want coat of arms. Some people want to travel to the native land where their ancestors came from. That's kind of been my thing. I've had a lot of people say, well, have you ever gone back to where your ancestors, you know, walked in their footsteps and stuff? And I go, yeah, I go to Santa Fe all the time. You know, I don't have to go very far. And so, you know, for me, it's a bunch of different things. And I'm sure if we just took a poll, a lot of people would have different goals, basically, of what your genealogy wish list might look like. So why reboot your genealogy? We could have said restart, redo, whatever. Maybe you haven't done genealogy in some time. You've had to put it away because you had to go to work, someone was sick in your family, you got tired of it, just for various reasons. So you need to start thinking about it some more. One of the bigger things I think that people get discouraged is that they never took a class. You know, they never really learned how to do genealogy. And there's things that come with that. There's terminology, you know, what is the pedigree chart, what is the family group sheet, citations, all these things that people, I think, take for granted, but they don't really know the proper steps. In my case, I was so excited to find some of the stuff. I just flew by the information, went on to the next person, and I have boxes and boxes of paper at home that have all kinds of really interesting data, but I don't know where I got it from. You know, I never wrote the source down. I don't know if it was Carlos Gomez that gave it to me, or my other cousin Simon Padilla, or one of you people in here. And so, you know, my own citations and things in my database, I've had to really kind of firm it up a little bit.
Turn the page around. I was telling Henrietta when we were working on this, where it talks about why reboot and the classes. I sat in the library here for a good year. I'd come every day after work when it was open. I was so excited. I got hooked on gourlets like you'd never seen. I thought they all connected to the one guy, because there was one who came from France. That way, gather them all and just put them in this huge database and just connect. And I was here every day. I never took any lessons. I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't document my sources. I had some of the best volunteers in the room there, and I didn't know who they were. I never asked questions. I was just looking at my own records. I remember one day when I was in there, and Joe Salazar was sitting there, and he was talking, and he was mentioning something about the area of research, and I looked at him, I go, what is your name? And he goes, Joe Salazar, and I go, oh, and I was so excited, and he goes, and your name? I said, Angela Lewis. He goes, the Gourlets. So we were all excited. But yeah.
Yeah, and so, you know, part of that is just the excitement. Can you guys hear me? Because I have a pin thing on. So again, gathering your data, pedigree charts, family group sheets. I like the form I handed out to you today. It's our Primaris Familias form, and we use it for our DNA project also. And I'll tell you the reason I like it is because every time you put something on a line, it asks you for the source. Unlike a pedigree chart, doesn't have a line underneath it that says, where did you find this document? Or a burial date or a marriage date. So, you know, individual type of worksheets. A lot of people use computer programs. I am still old school. I still use paper and pencil, a big eraser. So some of that just kind of comes with what you're comfortable with. Again, start with yourself. Angela and I had a great time talking about this because I kept telling her, people need to find that closet genealogist in their family. Now, I have 3 of them, and I didn't know they were doing genealogy till my grandparents told me they were. And so it was kind of a good find for me because I got somebody to work on my Gomez line, my Lujan line, and my Padilla line, and they had already done it. So I was able to gather some of that data and actually utilize their information. Isn't that what we do all the time, though, with journals and articles and stuff like that? So look for your closet genie.
Yeah, it's like with me. When I started asking my mother questions about her family, they all shut up. All the family. The uncles, I'm going, I didn't know my grandparents' names. I asked my mother, she goes, none of your business. They're dead. And I said, but Mom, who are they? None of your business. And I thought my aunts and uncles would surely answer, no. They didn't either. A couple years later, I took my mom to Los Angeles and took her to Disneyland and all that. And we visited a cousin out there, Viola. And oh my God, she had everything. I was so thrilled I never went to sleep that night. I made sure my mom was asleep so she wouldn't hear me getting all the good gossip from cousin Viola. But I was on a roll. I found my grandparents. And then what was funny is I go home, look at all my records, and I had them all the time. They were right next door in the census.
So yeah, take notes. If you find that closet genie, take them to lunch, get them a Starbucks card, whatever it takes to get that data from them. Because they have stuff that you probably don't have. So the other part of this is your citations. Okay, I told you I went to the library. I mean, I'm famous for this. I'd get so excited, I'd copy it for 10 cents and go home, and then I'd never figure out where I copied it from. I mean, it just, those of us, I know all of you in this room pretty much, I know you've all done that, but no one's admitting it but me. So, but put the name of the book, the author, the page. If you're in a certain library, let's just say that you go to the El Paso Library at UTEP. There, put the call number where you found it on your back of your form that you copied. If you talk to a person, write the person's full name, their date that you talked to them, what you talked to them about, maybe their phone number. And the same thing with film. Film is invaluable right now, but it's, the roll number, the frame, and where you used it. Now, we had this big discussion because the main library here has a different call numbers for their film than the state archives does. The LDS Haynes Library has better film. Some of the films are better than at the main library. So maybe you're using 3 or 4 different films to find the same information, but you just, once those old machines, the film gets scratched and you can't read it and stuff like that. So again, I think it's critical where you get that stuff. Even write down sometimes, film sucks. It's terrible, I can't read the film there. It's awful. We were at the state archives the other day and she's shaking her head. She's like, I don't know how I'm gonna read this stuff. It was terrible. I don't know how she read it either, I left. So, but she probably, struggled through it. And if you're looking at a website, mark down that URL that it's on the website for. There's so much stuff online anymore today that you really, really have to pay attention to that stuff. And you can even, how you cut and paste a URL, you can put that in a Word document so you can have it saved that way. So just think about every time you find something, even if it's bad information, write down where you got it from. Because we're going to talk about bad information today also. So again, I just want to go over this. Pedigree charts, I've seen them filled out different ways. The top is always the guy, and the bottom is always going to be your mom. So if this is you, this will be your dad, this will be your mom. I've seen people flip them, and I get confused. And that's just the way the genealogy world works. So this is the form I've been really getting people to use. It's our Primeras Familias form. It's got, your name, whatever, whoever line you're researching, when they were married, they're born, and right here the documentation that you used to actually find the information to put on the form. Okay? And you can't say, my mother told me. That does not work. Or somebody said, or I was at the library and I met this person and she had all this great information and I just wrote it all down. That's not documentation, okay? So this is the form that we handed out. It's stapled backwards, but you can unstaple it and do it. But the reason I like it is it makes you stick to one line. Okay, so I think one of the biggest problems with being a genealogist is we get distracted too easily. So I'm off working on my Gallegos line, and before you know it, I'm working on my Lopez line, who married in my Bleo line to my Estrada lines, and I'm never back to the Gallegos people.
Well, that never comes.
And so, yeah, so we do it all the time, and I recently just did that. So it keeps me on track, because if I want to say that I want to go back to Roque Gallegos, I can show how I go back to him through that one line, and it keeps me focused. Because if you use something else, you're just going to get distracted. And I know you all do that. So here's the form. Here is my name. I put my name on here. And I was born February 33rd, 1999 in Las Vegas. And I put down here that I used my birth certificate. And we're going someplace with this because we know that that's not right. So I used my birth certificate that my mom saved for me in her cedar chest, like a good mother. And it has, my name, Henrietta Martinez, okay? The problem is when I was baptized Adelina Henrietta Martinez, and my mom blames my grandmother. I got married, I changed my name legally to Henrietta Martinez Christmas because Henrietta Adelina Martinez Christmas was just too long and nobody cared. And everybody calls me Hank. So, you know, I could put on that form Hank, but no one's gonna know who that is. But they might know who these other three people are or think it's the same person. So I ran into this with my Uncle Joe Jr., whose name is Jose Leon. People that have Franciscos that they call him Pancho. I see it all, people. So, you know, be interesting, find their real legal name. And so with me, I went back and I actually have my baptism record, my birth record, all of the above. Now, when my brother was born, he was very sick, and they didn't name him. So his birth certificate was blank. It was called no name. And so one of the things, later on when he had it changed legally, I kept telling him, it's never too late to be Elvis. You know, come on, dude, pick something cool. But his name's Antonio. So, you know, use the forms that you have. How many of you have your own birth certificate? And you've used it to fill out your genealogy. Good, good. So records that have birth on them that are real, what we consider really good are, of course, your vital record, your birth certificate. A baptism record, we get back far enough in New Mexico, there are no birth certificates, they're all baptisms. Marriage license may have a birth on there. Some of them are accurate, some are not, but it's a clue. Your military draft records may have a birth date on it, because that is a legal document. Or your enlistment. Those of you that have been in the military, if you have a DD 214, that document's going to have your birth date on it. That's a legal document. Records that may not be so good would be like a newspaper clipping. My mom, when I was little, I talked to her about this yesterday, she must have known somebody at the Las Vegas Optic, because she has announcements of everything I did up to like age 4. So birthdays, you know, when my 3rd birthday was, when I was born, if I was going to go on a trip, I mean, just all kinds of stuff. That is not a vital document. It's a clue, but it's not a vital document. People will tell me, but I found it in the newspaper. And that's somebody that told the newspaper wrote it up, then somebody else probably edited, and then that person ended up putting it in the newspaper, right? So it's already like gone through 7 or 8 hands of people. Those are great for scrapbooks. Obituaries are wrong sometimes, same thing. Obits are given by some person in the family to the mortuary writes it up, it's given to the newspaper, somebody at the newspaper edits it, puts it in the paper, and it could be wrong. So again, just be careful of what the documents that you're using are. And I always try to stick to these first 2 for birth records. It's not always easy, but that's kind of what I like to do. But there's the death record, the all-famous death record. We've dealt with this quite a bit with the primeras familias. People will use the birth off of a death record. And the only thing that's vital statistically on a death record is the death. Everything else is hearsay, right, from the person that filled it out. So be careful with those too. But they're good clues. And then the census, we all love the census. It gives you a time, a place, but not everybody had the right age. We don't know who gave that age at the time of the census. But just double confirm everything. You know, the genealogy standard is that you have 3 documents that prove the one thing. I think 2 is plenty, but 3 is the standard. So I'm going to give you something that happened to me. So most of you know I'm a Blea. I'm looking for Juan de Jesus Blea, the son of Juan Herbacio and Victoria Manuela. Looked for him for years. And one day I got my Santa Fe baptism book out and I thought, I'm going to read the front of the book. Wow, I'm going to read how this book was put together. And so what I did was I found out that if you didn't have a surname or the parents didn't have a surname, they were going to use the godparent's surname. Okay? Well, lo and behold, this is my Juan de Jesus, Victoria's Petrona's sister, so I don't know why the names were not put into the record. I was pretty upset. I'd looked for them for a long time. I'd looked through indexes, books, I'd been on the film. And so anyway, lo and behold, my guy's parents are really Juan Gervasio Blea and Manuela Ortega. If I had always just looked at the book, I would have never found out, because there is no way in heck that he's a Dominguez. There's absolutely no way. And so when you have these books that are done by extractions, read the beginning, see how they're put together, look at how they're indexed. Go name by name, page by page. I have gone through Santa Fe baptisms probably 100 times, if not more, looking for people that are no surname, like this kind of a record, okay? So you may say, I can't find that baptism, but have you gone name by name, page by page in the book? So again, look and check, look and check. All the books are put together differently. Don't think because Santa Fe Baptisms Volume 1 is this way that Volume 2 is going to be the same way. Or Taos Baptisms or anything like that. So, look at the book, look how they're put together. Other baptisms that we have, so Filomena Garcia, she's in another book. She was born 1873, the daughter of Guadalupe Garcia and Teodora Blank. And the child died before arriving at the church. So how did they baptize a dead child? You have to kind of ask yourself some of these questions. Did they really baptize her, or was this a burial record? So think about that. And then if she's in your family, don't go marrying her off to somebody because she died as a baby. So we have some of those too. So read the records. If you see this symbol next to a baptism record, it means that child died. And there's a lot of them. A lot of people don't realize that when you see this next to that name, that person has died. And they do it in military records, in the burial books too, just any signatures like that. But even this part says murió. So take notes of some of those things when you're doing them. Okay, so this one is a guy named Gregorio Chavira. He's the son of Benito and Transita Ramirez, but he was adopted by James Murphy. Okay, so let's say Gregorio in 1920, I'm gonna go look for my baptism record in Albuquerque. Murphy, I'm Greg Murphy. He's never gonna find his baptism. This was indexed under Chavira. It wasn't indexed doubly under Murphy. Could have put Gregorio Murphy too. And so again, this is one of those page by page people that you have to go through and make sure that they're there or not there. I look at all the Gregorios, any and all of the above. So here's another book, Brigida Adela Sanchez, indexed with both names, Sanchez and Chavez, because she was adopted by Santiago Chavez. So your chances of finding her maybe 40 years later are a little bit better because she's been indexed under both names. So the moral of this story is look at the books, look how they're put together, look at what you're studying, read the record. She's adopted. She probably took on the Chavez name. She may never have known she was adopted. We don't know that. We don't know a lot of stuff that happened in 1870. So look at that kind of information. So we're going to go back to my worksheet. So here I am, and I'm going to marry Walt Christmas in 1985, and I'm looking at this certificate, this stuff, and I'm going, wait a minute, I made a mistake. I copied the date of birth down wrong. So give yourself a check that you wrote the names down correctly. I have some stuff that, from the 1600s that I've transposed the dates, you know, instead of 1692, it's 1629 or something like that. So check your work, make sure that, you know, I was minus 14 when I got married instead of 25 or whatever. So check your work, and then I put down here my Boulder County, we were married in Boulder County, Colorado, so that's what I'm gonna put on here as my supporting documentation. Again, marriage certificates are great, church records I think are great. Second marriages are fantastic sometimes, they list when the person died, you can actually put that, you know, wife died, whatever. Diligencias are the prenuptial investigations that we use, and divorce cases. We've been talking about, we're getting into that era now where people are not getting married, we have a lot of single mothers, people get divorced, names change, I mean, all kinds of things happen. And so, you know, divorce records are kind of interesting. Again, newspaper clippings. Remember in the old days, when you got married, they put your picture, and when you got married, and who walked you down the aisle, and all that kind of stuff. Those are great. And I think a census with the relationship works. A lot of censuses don't say wife, or husband, or head of household, or child, or son, or granddaughter, or whatever. So some censuses, you can't really tell what the relationship of that person is in there, so you need to kind of take a look at it.
All this time in the database, I carried her as Rosaria Gallegos. You know, that's what the newspaper said. I never found a marriage record. And then Henrietta was going to the archives one day, and I had had an entry out of one of the wills things, and I said, can you find this document for me? And it turned out to be Damasio's will that she was entering into the courts along with his brother Tomas, and it says her name is Rosaria. I had her as Rosinda. I think I confused there. The newspaper had Rosinda Gallegos, and her real name was Rosaria. I never knew that the whole time, and once she came back with a legal document, that was to me primary source. My newspaper clipping wasn't good anymore.
Yeah, it was an interesting find too, because they were close, ROS.
Yeah.
So the other part, the part that Benito's talking about are these diligencias. They're in books. They have some of them, most of them have been filmed, but this is our ancestor, Rafael Antonio Madrid, widowed in second marriage, marrying Trinidad Gonzalez. Now, because I'm curious and I'm a, you know, private investigator, right, half time here, I'm gonna go figure out who those other two wives were, how many kids they had, anything else I can about them. But this is a good clue that he's been married before. She's 19, he's 55, it kind of makes sense. You ask that question, has he been married before? It's really unusual in colonial records for someone to be married for the first time at that age. And I think it was Nancy Anderson who enlightened me with a guy over in San Ildefonso that was about 50 when he was getting married the first time. We don't know what was wrong with him. So, so just, it's, you know, we just kind of know our history, so it is important. So the diligencias are really, really good pieces of information, and there are errors on them.
And they're pretty juicy.
They're juicy too, yeah. So let's move on to deaths. So a death record obviously is a really good thing. Obituaries, how many of you look for obituaries or have them? All the time, yeah. Second marriage is a good way to figure out if somebody died, especially in the colonial period. You could not get married unless somebody died. There's no divorce back then. You could get divorced, but not in our records have I ever found a divorce. They're not in the census anymore, ever. I mean, there's people that disappear off the census and then they appear later, but like, let's just say you can never find them. Or a child's record that says my parents are dead. You know, they're getting married or something. So this is just a sample of a death record out of Taos. It says he's 2 months old, but his baptism record's actually 5 months old. So when they wrote this up, it has an error on it. We went back and checked it twice. This is my grandma Filomena Madrid, Mestis Madrid, Estrada, over in Vadeadero, New Mexico. You can't even read her headstone. So, this is probably 15 years old. I don't know that you can read it today because a lot of stuff is made from flagstone. So if you have a picture of a headstone, you know, put that in with your documents because I think that can be helpful, although sometimes they can have mistakes too. So this guy, Bartolome Sanchez, is from Rio Arriba, Española, the Huachapangue area. This is his death record. So his death is a primary source document right here. Ubaldo Sanchez, likely his son, is the one that filled it out. Maybe it was his brother. But he says he was born in 1846. So this is a secondary line of a clue, is what I say. It's a clue. Go look for the baptism. Check it out. And it names the parents. But you need to confirm that too, because what if Ubaldo didn't know who his parents were and he wrote something else down? Or he wrote his own parents' name down because he didn't understand the question. So think about what's on the form, if it's really good or not, but on death records, the death is the best part. So just again, I'm gonna just go over this again because people have a hard time. The died on date is good information. We know that, he's dead. So it says that he was born February 5th, 1846 in Española. Española didn't exist in 1846. Santa Cruz de la Cañada, okay? So if I have Española on my pedigree chart or my forms or whatever, and you send it to me, or let's say I'm just gonna pick on somebody over here sends it to me, and I'm going, there's no Española back then. Española wasn't Española till after 1900. So I would want to have that changed on the record, on my genealogical stuff. And I would go look for the birth record. I would look at who the parents were, the age, who the informant was, and I would go and look for that birth record. I have to tell you that that death record, though, is probably the most pristine record I've ever seen. Ubaldo really knew his family history. It's really, really good. So some of the things that I do on death records are, of course, if there's this symptom here of, and I think Nancy and I talked about this way back when we were doing Santa Fe burials. The old books usually say buried. That's not the day they died, okay? So read the record, but we know in the old days that mostly if you died this morning, you might be in the ground this afternoon, right? Okay, so you're pretty close. But it says buried. There's very few that actually say when they died. But known as, I always call it, maybe died a few days earlier. There's some people that we know are buried in the church because the ground is frozen outside, and then later on they rebury them outside. So again, I don't know when that would be recorded. Okay, so if someone has Jose Jaramillo is going to marry Maria Chavez, and on his record it says they're going to get married December 9th, 1799, and in the record it says Jose is the son of Juan Jaramillo, deceased. I put before that date in the father's burial date, and then when I find another record that has another date, I may add that in there too, because I'm going to go look for that burial date eventually, and I want to have a clue as to when I should be looking for him. So if I don't put that in, I could look up into the 1850s. But this tells me that there was a record that says he was dead. On the census, again, all the censuses have a date, and if they say widowed, widower, you can look up at the census date and actually see when it was taken, and then put after that date or before that date or whatever if you're using the census information, and then just the actual date of death is actually even better. So there's other ways of handling death records. Dates, we've talked a little bit about this. The genealogical standard for dates are military, 1 January 2016. That's, if you write an article or you look at some of the national genealogical journals, anything like that, it will always be reverted to that. You do whatever you want in your own genealogy, your own databases, your own whatever. That's just the norm. The location is something else I run into quite a bit. And I'm probably more of a lazy person when it comes to place names in my own stuff. I would just put Corrales, New Mexico, because that's just who I am. But if I was gonna do something where maybe Corrales, well, I should pick on Anton Chico, because Anton Chico used to be part of San Miguel County, and then it became part of Guadalupe County. And so sometimes I will put the difference in with the county. But I know where Anton Chico is, so in my stuff, I don't really care. But if somebody was gonna give it to me to proof it and look at it, they wanted to write an article or they wanted to submit it for something, I would probably have them put the county in. Now, back before 1821, there's the Republic of Mexico, remember, for 25 years? I have very rarely seen anybody that gets down to that detail of government control. So the reason you'd want to do the actual, like off the birth record, the actual place is because when you're going to put all this stuff together in a 3-ring notebook and give it to your favorite nephew, and he's going to go back and check your work, he's going to want to be able to find that information. And so that's the reason that you want to put it down. We all know Santa Fe was a province of New Mexico in the Kingdom of Spain. Do you need to put all that down in your genealogy? Some people do. I get tired of writing. I just put Santa Fe, New Mexico. But there's a Santa Fe, Spain, a Santa Fe, Bolivia, Peru. There's Santa Fe's all over the world. So you have to kind of think about what you're going to do here. Census records, we all love the census. It puts your family in a time and place. You can do clusters of families at one time, because I collect censuses in 5-page increments. I do the page they're on, 2 before and 2 after. And it gives you all kinds of neat stuff: name, age, years married, occupation, children, if they rent a home, if they can read. Old days we used the Soundex. Today we use Ancestry, Family Search. They kind of do the Soundex for us. Again, I would just say caution with the census on dates, relationships, age, neighbors. Just because they're there doesn't mean that's their real name. You may have the wrong couple. How many Jose Trujillos do we have in our genealogy in New Mexico? You know, so those kinds of things. So here's the 1860 census for Santa Cruz, precinct number 7, today known as Espanola. It's a beautiful census, right? Except it doesn't tell you the relationships between the people on here, or spouse, on some of that stuff. So don't, I think even better would have been like 3rd wife, 2nd wife. You know, just keep adding and adding. So be careful when you start using the census. Just make sure that you have the right family. Yeah, it was the only standard. So for instance, for Rio Arriba County in 1860, for the post office, every post office is Los Luceros. We know that's not true. For 1860 in San Miguel County, they pulled all the census apart and did it alphabetically. So the house, you know, so you go from like here, we were going to Martinez Town and then to Los Barreles. Well, we just kind of go with the flow, right, or they're going to go to the next neighborhood. But 1860 San Miguel County, you can have Rociada right next door to Anton Chico, and they're not even close. So look at dwelling numbers, study what you have, because I think a lot of times people just find them. Like me, I get so excited when I find them. You know, I don't study the stuff. Just keep writing it down.
I love census records. I was very lucky. The 1750 census was very, very clear. This is Antonio Gerlet. He was the one and only son of Jacques Gerlet that came from La Rochelle, France. He became Santiago Gerlet, and Elena Gallegos. It shows him and his wife. And the really neat thing about this is it has the majority of the kids listed. And then here it has Rosa, Indian, and she's the servant, age 40, with 5 of her sons. and another servant in the household, Bernardina, with her children. And this type of information, I'm very lucky. Most of my family was here. I didn't have to go looking too far, and so, plus I found a lot of published things. For my own records, I retyped the census. If you go into the Gerlay website, you will see that I put the years in them. I like the years, it helps me, and it answers a lot of questions. One of the questions that had come up in the census and in the DNA world, and I found it on the HGRC database, and we got that fixed, was Rosa must have been the mother of Antonio, because the DNA for this family is Chavez. Yeah, it's kind of looking like that. And the database had that Rosa, because Rosa's son Antonio here, and this Antonio, have the same DNA, all the lineage, it all matches. And I went back and looked at the census record, and I said, no, they're the same age. Can't be the mom. So I worked with HGRC, which everybody can do. Their database got it fixed. And it's really neat because it identifies a whole bunch of things in here. But like I said, for my census, I go in and add all the years. Now we're going to introduce you to one of the families in the census because I really like them. They're very prominent in Placitas, all that area. They were one of the founding families out there. They moved out there. If you go back into their history, in the Elena Gallegos will, she gives land to Rosa. And that's where they all moved. They established huge, huge people. And so when people contact me, I kind of know where they're at. The 1870 census here has Nicholas Gerlay, he's 45. And he's married to Catalina Bustos. And so that puts him born about 1825 based on the age, and her about 1815. By the 1880 census, he's now, he's now 70, she's now 60. But look at what's over here. Daughters, Nicolita, Petra, and Maria are all listed as prostitutes. Now what's real fun about this family is, like I say, when you find census records, and like Henrietta mentioned, you have to really study them. And I know the Gerlays, I know where they were, I have them all, I knew. Nicholas's son, Jose Aaron Librado, is one of the founding people that established the first Presbyterian church in Placitas. His sisters were not prostitutes. They go on and establish families. You know, there's a lot of history on them. This book here, Women's Tales from New Mexico WPA, is full of his testimonies, all of the family. It's got all this whole family in there. Really, really good book. Highly recommend it. But, Henrietta and I were talking about the word prostitute. And there were a couple of reasons why it could have been. One, my thoughts. The census takers sometimes would ask the religion it was, and they could have said prospitorio or something like that, you know? Yeah, something like that, and the census taker, oh, they're probably saying prostitute. Or like Henrietta suggested, what if they knew and that this family had left the Catholic Church and were mad and said, I'll show you, and put prostitute down. You don't know, but it sure makes for interesting. This is the founding family of the church in Placitas. And this is his actual birth record. As you can see, he was really born on 7 July 1822. He was baptized on that date. The census records, they move around. The dates change. As most of you know, you don't know who answered the door. A lot of times, the census takers had to travel a long ways. Little neighbor answered, or the aunt was taking care of the kids, or the census taker looked. Guadalupe, male or female? I don't know, kid has bushy hair, can't tell. But they're interesting, but always go back to your birth record. They're good, like she said, for location at a time frame. No, you go. No, I'll jump in here in a bit.
Okay, so we all have, in this day and age, we can't get away from it. All these different kinds of trees that are out in the interweb, as I call it at home. And they're here to stay. You know, there's days I wake up and I just wish I'd wake up and all the wrong trees that are online would disappear. Because they cause a lot of problems. Ancestry, I mean, a lot of people have them, the HGRC Great Database, and I have to just tell you that they have a team of about 7 people currently going through that right now, editing and fixing it. There's wiki trees, and then we'll pick on Angela's Gourlay website. So there's a lot of stuff out there. There's a lot of people that have published. They're proud of their family. This is their research. They want to get it done. So I'll let Angela tell you her little story.
We've got Andres Gourlay here. He is on Ancestry.com. It shows him born in 1773 in Belen. He's married to Maria Pascuala Grego, and they go on to have a long life. Lots of kids, lots of descendants. And my website doesn't have this, and so I've been contacted many times, and I finally went and looked it up on Ancestry.
And family search.
Yeah, a family search, and I found him, and I go, but this isn't the same guy. I tracked down who had submitted the record, Richard Marcus out of Rio Rancho, and I wrote him, and then I talked to him on the phone, and I said, if I prove you wrong, will you take it down? And he goes, well, yeah, prove me wrong. I had the baptism record, dated 3 December 1773. He is the son of, as it says, Serafin Gourlay and Gertrudis Aragon, and the death record, 8 days later. Now to note here, he goes, but this is my guy, he's in Belen. I said, well, in 1773, the Belen records don't start till 1793, that's point number 1. But I had the death record there. He contacted Ancestry.com, they refused to pull it down. I have been working with some of the people out of the LDS, they refuse to do it. I showed them the proof, they refused to do it. And I just documented everything, put in the story, put the proof, had HGRC publish it, and now when anybody contacts me with the same issue, because they still do, because it's in the database, I just send them a copy of the record, of the article. Most of the time I never hear from them again. And then there's books, published books. I'm sure many of you have seen, this is in libraries all over the place. It's a nice book by Bill F. Gourlay. He wrote it in 1987. Fleeting Shadows and Faint Echoes of Las Huertas. Beautiful book, beautiful. Stories, pictures. The genealogy is wrong. And I looked at it, and he's got the ancestor going back to Jacques from France, and it's really going back to Grossat. And I finally tracked him down to, and I asked him about it, trying to be nice. And he says, Angela, I worked for years. I promised my family I would have this published book. I worked for years, and then when I finally found proof that my ancestor was from Rosa, I didn't want that in my book. So I changed it. I go, you what? He goes, my book. And I go, but I've got everybody arguing with me. They contact me because of your book. And he goes, oh, wow. And he has since passed on a few years ago, but I still get questions on that. And I don't have any other than send them to the website, show them all that, but they go, my grandfather, my uncle, my dad published, and I try and word it real nicely.
So we're going to harp a little bit on this again. Source, take notes of your sources, citations, whatever you want to call them. No source is no good. I'm part of the team that helps validate Primeras Familias and the DNA project, and people don't have sources for their stuff. It makes it very difficult. Grandma told me, my mom told me, a better one would be to put the Spanish and Mexican census, page 102. That actually helps people. The nice part about digitizing stuff is you can put it in your computer in many places. You know, you can have it under census, under the name, under two people's names, I mean the same document, whatever. A lot of people use their phone anymore to take a picture and digitize that. My only caution with thumb drives, flash drives, is that when you put someone else's flash drive in your computer, be very leery that you're not uploading a virus or something. I always think it's like dropping food on the table, you know, floor and putting it in your mouth. When we were still here at Special Collections, I think it was Joe Salazar that used someone else's thumb drive and lost his entire computer. So, you know, be careful about that. Technology's here. It's not going to go away. We just got to get smarter about how we actually use it. So I'm going to give some shout outs here to our Primeras Familias team. They've done a super fantastic job. This is a blessing when we get things that come in like this. So Miguel Baca, born about 1855, his first wife is Teresa. They're in Taos County, New Mexico. Over here for La Junta, he even put Huatros in parentheses. I mean, I'm like going, who is this person that did this fabulous thing? He gives us a little synopsis. Miguel is mentioned as the son of Tomas Baca by Chavez in Origins of New Mexico Family, page 321. This is the kind of stuff you can do in your own genealogy too. This is really, really neat stuff. He goes through and gives all the sources for born, died, marriage. Just really, really neat stuff. Write it out, write it down. Then the next generation, he did the same thing. He put this with the baptized date, so born and baptized date. Belen, Valencia County. Again, just a little synopsis. So when these people get, and right now we're a bunch of women, so when us gals get all these applications in, you can check one of these in about half an hour because it's all there, it's all done, it's all in order. And like all genealogy, it's birth, marriage, and death. I mean, that's kind of the order of everything. So this is a beautiful one. We get stuff like this where people go in and hand type. I don't want you to read all of it, but for the born, she put where the birth certificate came from. The baptized, the died, she's got it down here. She even added when she found them on the census. So again, these are great types of things that you can use for your own genealogy, how you document them, what you do. Even under buried, she had put here section F, lot 7A, space 3. I was a little envious of that because I haven't done that with my own burial records, although when they're buried out in the middle of nowhere, there's no row. But still, you know, I could have a picture or something. So again, just another indication of how you can put something together. You can type it out. You can type it out by person, by family, by group. This is what I do, and all of you know I always am working on my own line. I use a legacy family tree. You guys use whatever you want or do it paper, but I was printing this out the other day and I noticed I don't have her death records cited. So I need to go in there and find it and put the citation for her death record. This is my mom's line. My mom is a Sanchez. It goes right up. So you know, I like to see what I'm missing, what I need to go back, find the record for, make sure I have the right date. My Spanish is a lot better today than maybe it was 37 years ago. I can read documents better today than I could 37 years ago. So I think I'm a better genealogist. And so I think with some of that, the more you do this, you can go back and look at some of your stuff and say, whoa, I made a mistake here. And I made this one up. It's part of a Primeras Familias. But sometimes when you just write it out, the marriage, look here. This is, instead of 1721, oops, it should be 1721. I had typed 1821. So the nice part about doing some of this is make sure it flows, make sure there's a timeline, make sure it works, make sure you have the right couple, or not. Maybe you want to work on somebody else's genealogy and not really your own. I've done that before. And so, you know, you just kind of get confused. But I think writing it out actually helps quite a bit. So with all of that, I leave you, but we will take questions.